World War II, Part 1, The Rise of Fascism. The essential questions that you will be responsible for answering after this unit are: how did the unresolved issues of World War I pave the road to World War II? And how did the U.S. contribute to the Allied victory in World War II? The objectives for this part of Unit 8 are to identify reasons for United States involvement in World War II, including the growth of Italian, German, and Japanese dictatorships and their aggression, especially the attack on Pearl Harbor. Also, to analyze major issues of World War II, including the Holocaust. Now let's look at some of the causes of World War II. First of all, the peace settlements from World War I have failed. Economic instability has increased throughout the entire world as a result of the Great Depression. Nationalistic dictators have gained control in Europe and Japan, and we will look at this momentarily. Appeasement has failed, and Germany invades Poland. These are the causes of World War II beginning. What are some of the effects? Germany invades numerous European countries, as we will see. The United States will pass the Neutrality Acts. Congress will boost defense spending and establish the military draft. The United States provides aid to Great Britain and the Soviet Union. Japan, Germany, and Italy will form the Axis powers. Adolf Hitler and his Nazi Party came to power in depression-racked Germany in 1933. Condemning the terms of World War I peace settlements and the Treaty of Versailles, the Nazis promised to restore the nation's economy and its military strength. They also began making plans to conquer their neighbors. Germany soon formed an alliance with Italy and Japan, two other aggressor nations. After Germany invaded Poland, Great Britain and France stood by their ally and declared war on Germany. The Second World War had begun. At the end of World War I, many new democracies were established in Europe. In the years between the two world wars, most of these democracies were replaced with dictatorships. Conditions in Europe after World War I were favorable to the rise of dictatorships. The Russian Revolution led to the world's first communist state in the Soviet Union. The dissolution of the German and Austro-Hungarian Empire led to the creation of fragile new democracies in other parts of Europe. Joseph Stalin transformed the Soviet Union from a rural nation into an industrial power. But what about fascism? Benito Mussolini formed the Fascist Party, which took power in Italy in 1922. Adolf Hitler took power in Germany in 1933 after the high unemployment caused by the Great Depression. These new dictatorships glorified violence, obedience to leaders, and extreme nationalism. They arrested, imprisoned, and often killed their opponents. While Joseph Stalin and Mussolini agreed on nationalism, a centralized government, and militaristic expansionism, they did disagree on the ownership of property. Also a fascist, Francisco Franco was a dictator of Spain who was aided by Germany and Italy. With a great rise in unemployment and a very shaky democracy, Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany. Hitler's Nazi Party, also known as the German National Socialists, condemned Jews and others. Hitler had an expansionist foreign policy. He rearmed Germany, helped Spanish dictator Francisco Franco, annexed Austria, and demanded Sudetenland, a part of Czechoslovakia where many Germans lived, in Czechoslovakia in 1938. Hitler established a dictatorship as brutal or worse than Joseph Stalin's in Russia. He was determined to achieve German domination of Europe. Nazi aggression would be the main cause for the outbreak of World War II. As conditions of the 1919 Treaty of Versailles after World War I, Germany disarmed and agreed to a complete demilitarization of the Rhine River area. with the right bank region extending 30 miles into Germany to be occupied by the Allies for 15 years or longer. Germans felt as if the Rhine River, virtually a national symbol to them, had been lost forever. In 1930, the German war debt was restructured to pay annuities until 1988. To reward Germany for acceptance of this plan, the Allies evacuated the Rhineland early. Then, 5 years later, on March 16, 1935, Germany denounced all clauses of the Treaty of Versailles and moved to build an army, claiming that the growth of French and Russian armies was the cause. Then, on March 7, 1936, Germany reoccupied the Rhineland and began refortifying it in clear violation of the Treaty of Versailles. However, the League of Nations did not act. A conference was held in Munich to determine how to address Hitler's demands to avoid war. Winston Churchill of Great Britain was opposed to the Munich Pact. The League of Nations failed to stop the aggressors. British and French leaders gave in to Hitler's demands in an attempt at appeasement. Hitler took the rest of Czechoslovakia and then demanded part of Poland in 1939. This time, British and French leaders refused to give in. The Soviet Union and Germany signed a non-aggression pact that led to the invasion and division of Poland, drawing Britain and France into war with Germany, thus starting World War II in Europe. The Blitzkrieg. The German army developed a new form of offensive warfare, the Blitzkrieg. Rapid coordinated movements of airplanes, tanks, mechanized troop carriers, and infantry made it possible to advance at rapid speed. This military strategy depended on surprise and overwhelming force. Germany quickly conquered Poland, defeated France, and controlled most of Europe by 1940. In 1941, Germany violated its non-aggression pact and invaded the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, Japan had invaded Manchuria. The successful invasion by Japan of resource-rich Manchuria in 1931 caused militarist leaders to gain control of the Japanese government in the early 1930s. In Asia, Japanese military leaders had already occupied Manchuria in 1931 and had invaded eastern China in 1937. Japan was increasing its imperialist efforts. Throughout these conflicts, the United States had maintained a strict policy of isolationism. However, there were some exceptions. American volunteers formed the Flying Tigers, a squadron of airplanes that helped keep supply lines to China open so that they could receive their war materials. The Flying Tigers also engaged in combat with the aggressive Japanese pilots. After Germany occupied France, Congress then passed the first peacetime draft. Another exception to the policy of isolationism was the Lend-Lease Act of 1941. In 1941, Congress passed the Lend-Lease Act in order to sell, rent, or lend wartime equipment to Britain, which stood alone in facing the terror of Nazi Germany. Surprisingly, events in Asia rather than Europe brought the United States into the war. President Roosevelt threatened an embargo to force Japan to give up some of its conquests. He froze Japanese assets and cut off all trade with Japan. Trade would resume only if Japan withdrew from China and Indochina. Japanese leaders wanted to seize Indonesia for its oil. On December 7, 1941, Japanese planes launched a surprise attack on the U.S. fleet at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The attack sank or severely damaged 18 U.S. ships, 260 airplanes were damaged or destroyed, and 6,000 Americans were injured or killed. The next day, President Roosevelt asked for a declaration of war against Japan. 4 days later, Germany and Italy, allies of Japan, declared war on the United States. Americans were now engaged in a war on two fronts, the Atlantic and the Pacific.